Today we play golf.
Let me show you how we do it in the pros.
Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
I never miss with the 7-iron.
A conversation with some of the most interesting innovators and entrepreneurs behind the biggest names in golf.
My friends were the golf clubs. I lived on the golf course. I lived on the driving range.
From pro talk
You should learn something from each and every single round you play in.
to fun from on and off the green.
Why would you play golf if you don't play it for money?
Just let me put the ball in the hole.
This is Behind the Golf Brand Podcast with Paul Liberatore.
What's up, guys? Paul from Golfers Authority. Welcome to Behind the Golf Brand Podcast. This week, I have my friend Matt McDonell from Next18. Next18 is a really cool not-for-profit out there, and I'm really excited to be sharing them with you guys to kind of hear about what they're doing with the game of golf and who they're helping. You know, actually, it's funny because the story is he's a friend of a friend, and I heard about them, and I'm like, oh, we need to spread this word. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for having me.
So where are you located?
So I'm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin right now, and that's where the nonprofit was founded.
Is it cold there? How cold is it?
Yeah, it's cold. We currently have a winter freezing advisory with snow. All the schools have been canceled. It's kind of chaotic today. So
Love snow days.
Yeah.
We never have them out in Arizona, but we did when I was in college. It was cool in college because I was like, oh, hell yeah. I remember, here's a story. Here's a really cool story. One time when I was in college, like, it was over MLK weekend. It was the Friday before, and it was a blizzard essentially. And they're like, "Oh, classes are canceled Friday," and it was a real blizzard. And so then we were like, "We're going to Chicago because it was a 3-day weekend." Sure. And I remember it was like 2 a.m, and we're driving out of West Lafayette, Indiana, and like going on the high, not on the freeway, we're on the interstate, we're on the highway, like to connect. And we get about halfway down, and then the cops stop us, and like, you can't go. Like, they're like, you can't go this way. There's like black ice. And I was like, what's that? You know, because I'm from Arizona. And they're like, you need to turn around. We were already halfway to the interstate. And I was like, so we had to turn all the way around. We drove all the way back. And then we got on the freeway, or the interstate, right? So now we're driving to Chicago. And it was like 2 a.m. It was pitch black out. Like, everyone's going like 1 mile an hour down the interstate, right? And it was like the most surreal, because there was like freaking semis all along the side of the interstate, like jackknifed, and like icicles and shit hanging off of them. And I was like, what the hell are we doing? Because I knew we'd probably die. And we're driving this like 1986 like Toyota Tercel. It was like the biggest piece of crap. And the heater didn't work.
It's funny when I went to college my first 2 years in Kentucky. So coming from a city here where, you know, gets 6-12 inches at a time, and everyone is just like, oh, this is normal, to a place there where a half inch of snow and they literally shut down the entire town because they didn't even have snowplows. So yeah, it
does always scare me. Like, ice scares me, man. Cause I remember being at a stoplight once in Indiana, and all of a sudden I started just sliding. Like, I was stopped and I started sliding, and I was like, I was a panic attack. I was like, am I gonna hit this dude next to me? You know, and like, what are you gonna do? You can't gun it. You can't like, I don't know. So ice storms are no joke. Yeah. So you're not a professional golfer, obviously. I mean, maybe you are.
I wish.
I mean, we all.
I like to tell myself I am.
Yeah, well, we all do. Like, literally, I was literally talking about this yesterday. Like, I'm gonna do a YouTube video, and I'm going to show the world how bad I really am, and like, no cheating, right? Like, we all cheat, and if you say you don't, you're such a liar,
right?
Because like, we all cheat, and not like there's mulligans, but like, oh, you know, drop balls, water balls, balls in the forest, like, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, moving it a little bit. This is a bad lie.
Like for real. So like, I played golf like 2 months ago in a tournament. Not even a tournament. It was like just a get together, and the guy was giving me like lessons. Was like, hey, you need to be on it. Like, be real. Like who cares? Everybody else does, but just really take your score. And I did it, and I almost had a heart attack. Like, I was like so sad because I was like over 100, and I was like, seriously? And I'm like, you know, it's gonna be a really good video to show people, like, one, like how you get how to figure out your handicap, number one, and then two, like, okay, well, at least you know where you're starting from. Because I've always, like, who hasn't lied their whole life, right? Like, seriously, about golf. Oh yeah, I'm shooting the 80s. Bullshit, you hit in the 80s. Like, if you hit in the 80s like consecutively, then mad props. But yeah, so all right. So where'd you grow up then?
So I grew up in northern suburbs of Milwaukee. I'm originally from Michigan, but my parents moved a couple times when we were younger. They were corporate world, so we moved a bunch of different times, settled in northern Milwaukee, I think when I was like 10. grade
Do
school.
you guys ever say Milwaukee? Remember Wayne's?
Yeah, it's Algonquin for the native land. I'll never forget that line from Wayne's World.
That, like, you're like, yeah, I'm Milwaukee. We're in it. We're in a movie.
Yep.
It's not the. So, what did you do? So you grew up in? Did you play like golf like as a kid, or did you play with your dad, or like what? That's how I did it. I mean,
So I think I started playing golf when I was like 5 or 6. It's always been something that has been in the background for me. Played in high school, varsity team, junior and senior year. I was good enough to be at that point, right, when you're in high school, able to be on a team. I went into college at Murray State, tried out for the golf team down there. It was a Division I school for golf and I think basketball. It was really interesting because in Wisconsin where I played, it was one type of grass, and Murray State was
Bermuda or something?
Yeah. So that transition was extremely difficult. I never knew that at that age that there was differences in like the grass that you played on. And so when you're hitting off of one like explodes, the other you have a big divot with. So the differences between that affected your shot selection and everything and distances. And I don't know, I left the game of golf after college. I played a little bit while I was post-college, like in my early 20s. Then I joined the military. I was in Germany for 4 years. I was in the military for 5 years. Germany didn't have a lot of golf courses, and where I was stationed, I just didn't have time for it. So there was a period of about 10 years. And then when I got out of the military, when I started my first business, I just didn't play the game. I didn't have time. Everything that got me to starting this nonprofit took place about 2 years ago now. And I kind of post-military realized that I had kind of like given up on a lot of my passions, and golf was one of those. And I knew how easy it would be to go back to the game. So after I sold my business, I kind of had the financial freedom to do what I wanted. All I wanted to do was play golf. So I took a job at a local country club out here and literally just worked in the pro shop for an entire summer, played golf. I think I played 100 plus rounds in 2020. So while everyone was dealing with COVID, I was out on a golf course getting lost and rediscovering the passion that I had for the game. So I think in a way it kind of like saved me.
Interesting. Let's rewind a little bit. So you were in the military. What did you do in the military? What branch were you in? Army?
Yeah, I was in the Army. I was airborne infantry with the 173rd. I was in from 11 to the end of 15, deployed to Afghanistan in a combat role, 12-13. Medically retired from just wear and tear and combat injuries. So
when you were in Afghanistan, were you at a forward base, or where were you at?
So we were at a smaller base than a FOB. We were kind of like at a base
In between?
Outside, yeah, kind of protecting the FOB. So kind of on the front lines, going out every day, dismounted patrols, engaging in firefights in the enemy. So
what province were you in?
Logar province, about, I want to say like 60 or 70 miles southwest of Kabul.
So you're like on patrols like every day?
Yeah.
Like foot patrol, right? And like
Yeah.
talking to the people, right?
Yep.
And like handing out candy bars and hopefully not getting shot. And then later on getting shot
Yeah.
by the same people.
Yeah. Yeah. By the same people you were giving candy to and, you know, engaging, and they were shaking your hand. And yeah, it was a typical combat deployment. 6 months in, I got injured. So I was kind of taken out of that combat role.
How'd you get injured?
I damaged my knee pretty severely on during a movement that we were in. Kind of went over a wall of like moving out of a position, and it with a 95-pound rucksack on and a 25-pound weapon. I'm sure you can imagine what that did to my knee when I went over the wall. Yep. Yeah. So that was effectively the end of combat patrols for me.
I could imagine like one thing you guys focus on is like mental health, right? Like for veterans.
Right.
So, I mean, I could imagine the mental strain it would be to be in that condition, to like be on patrol and like literally being shot at under fire, and then rinse, repeat every day. So that's what kind of made you, like, what made you decide then, like, hey, like, you know, you get out of the military, right? And you're like, you had your own business, you sold the business, and then what made you decide to do this? Like, when you had that time to think about it, because you probably spent a lot of time not thinking about it, I would assume, and probably running away from it mentally. And this is, you know, I took, like, not having to deal with it, I'm assuming.
So I'll give you the quickest possible rundown.
We got time.
Okay. So when I got out of the military in 2015, I was medically retired. Part of the things that I was dealing with was PTSD from combat, insomnia from combat, post-concussive migraines, which was causing my whole body from like here up to tighten and, you know, to deal with the pressure. On active duty, towards the end, I was prescribed Ambien. And Ambien is, as we all know, to help with sleep and insomnia. Immediately after getting out of the military, going to the local VA, they put me on another medication, diazepam, which is a benzodiazepine.
They're like super strong.
Yeah, I didn't know. I really didn't know.
Nobody knows.
Taking.
Nobody knows. They just hand out crap like it's fucking candy. That's what they do. I mean,
so they've got me on 2 medications. Meanwhile, I'm doing what I think a good vet should be doing. I'm happily married. I've started my own business. I live in a pretty affluent area in Milwaukee. At this point, I'm already getting my MBA. I'm using the military resources. This goes on for about 3 years. And in 2018, one of my doctors approached me and said, hey, we're finding out that these benzodiazepines are worse than opioids. There's kind of like this whole initiative to get vets off. And even then, it didn't really resonate. And it was just like, oh, okay, you know, I'm on a medication. Okay, what do I have to do to stop?
The guidance. Easy.
Yeah, and I was taking like 20 milligrams of each of these. So I think the recommended dose, for years. The recommended dose is like 5 milligrams for maybe 90 to 120 days. So.
Like, what did it make you feel like? Does it make you feel numb?
Oh, yeah. In hindsight, now.
You're clean. Your mind's like clear, and you're like,
and the half-life of the chemicals are fully out of the body. You realize after the fact that you were kind of a zombie.
You're a functioning zombie, essentially, is what you are.
What a lot of us do, and it's very common for first responders too, is you load your plate with as much as possible, so you're emotionally numb, so you don't have to deal with the traumas from the past. And so going to school, you know, furnishing a new home, renovating a house, getting a business going.
You get completely, you busy yourself. Like you get so busy. Number one, you're mentally numb because of the medication. And then 2, you literally go 120 miles an hour every day to not deal with other stuff. No, trust me, I get it.
So basically what they recommended was, well, you can take a half a dose of each for 2 weeks and stop cold turkey.
Dude, that's bullshit.
Well, I know now. I did. And 14 days into cold turkey, it almost resulted in suicide.
Really?
I didn't know what was going on with my body chemically, mentally. I wasn't in control. Luckily, I got through locking up my guns safely. I had the foresight to like, you're not in control. Like, do this thing to protect yourself for the next 5 minutes. It ultimately took 18 months with some doctors outside of the VA to like incrementally every 3 weeks titrate milligram by milligram. I don't remember much of the 2 years. This was the time where I had to sell my business. I had to take care of myself physically and mentally. My marriage fell apart for whatever reason. I can't imagine I was a pleasant person to be around while I was going through the withdrawals from everything. So it cost me a lot. But in the meantime, I started reaching out to some of the veteran organizations that I had been in contact with. And one of them was Semper Fi Fund. They're a national nonprofit, and one of their modalities was recreational therapy and adaptive sports, and their whole thing was recovery through sport. I noticed that they had a golf camp, they had ski programs, they do all these programs where they would get a bunch of veterans together for maybe 4 or 5 days, Everything would be funded because this is a national organization. They're about the same size as Wounded Warrior Project. So I went on a trip, and at this point I was probably 4 or 5 months into the titration program. So I was pretty chemically imbalanced, mentally, emotionally. I still really didn't even know what was going on. And
so they put you back on it? Is that what happened?
No.
What happened?
Yeah. So you go back on it at a normal,
at a lesser dose, right?
Well, you go back to the normal dose, and then like literally,
the 20 milligrams, they put you back on it
with,
and then
the
slowly
plan.
take you. Yeah. Dude, you remember my story? Like, seriously, I was on Lexapro, and like my doctor was like, I didn't even need it. Okay, my doctor was like, "Oh, you need this when I was going to law school," and like, "Oh, this will help you with law school." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Oh, just trust me. It'll help you like stay constant. You'll just be able to concentrate more." And I was like, "Okay, no, for reals." And so they don't tell you all the other side effects, like weight gain, like numbness, like you just are hyper focused, like whatever. And then like last October, I was like, I'm gonna get off this crap. I don't need this crap anymore. And they also did the same thing. They go, oh, you only need like 10 milligrams. And by the end, I was on 20 milligrams, and I didn't even know why I was on 20 milligrams. Like I had no reason why. And so like I did the same thing and the dumbass doctor was like, oh yeah, wean you off over 2 weeks, dude. If you're on a drug for 10 years, you don't wean off over 2 weeks. Like you should, you start Googling around, you realize that's not the right way of doing it. So essentially, like, I did the same thing. When you're telling me so, I'm like, I totally understand, because like, you feel fine, like, oh, I'm feel great. The first week, you're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great. Second week, you're like, what the F? And like, I was getting I was like throwing up. I was like nauseous. Like I was all over the place, like emotionally, mentally, like for real. I was like, I totally get it. And like, I mean, it took months. Like I went cold turkey. I didn't, and like, I'll just get back on. I'm like, there's no way I'd rather go to hell. Like, there's no way I would do that, because I already went through all this other crap. So now when my doctor's always like, oh, you should try this. I'm like, no, not doing that, dude. I'd rather die. No thanks.
Informed consent now for me takes on a whole new meaning, and it's interesting,
like,
because now I'm getting a master's in social work to tie in with the work that we're doing with Next18, and I preach about it to all of the younger students with me about how, like, I've told them my story, and I said, this is why people need to know what they're taking. They need to know what the long-term effects are. Most of these medications, and I'm not saying all medications are bad. Most medications, if you follow the plan, right, like the guidance, like Ambien, I think it's something like, it's a short-term medicine coupled with a really good sleep regimen plan, so that you can fix the circadian rhythm, get back into a routine, so that you can come off of it in like 90 days, but you've adapted, and your brain and your body and all the chemistry is back to, okay, now we have the routine to go forward. It's not a Band-Aid. It's not a, hey, here's this thing,
a forever Band-Aid.
Right.
Like, that's what it is. Like and you, as a human, you think, oh, this is why I sleep well. And then what happens is you withdraw as soon as you get off of that, and you're like, cuckoo. It, like, when you're right, it takes forever. Like the 2 weeks is complete BS. Like, it takes forever. It took me 5 months probably to get off of it, and that was after starting. Like, I mean, every day it's like you get 1% better. You know, I remember 0.5%. Like, so then when you went to the camp, then so at that point, like, how far off were you off of that drug then?
I was 4 months into an 18-month recovery titration plan. I was in the midst of it.
Did the VA give you that plan, or did
no, the outside providers did. So I didn't have communication with the VA for 2 years after it, because I was, in my mind at the time, they had cost me everything. They almost cost me my life. They cost me my marriage. They cost me a business.
You're like, I'm not trust you guys. You guys messed me up. I mean, nothing against the VA. Funny. It's just that,
right.
I mean,
that needs to be said, because people hear my story and they're like, God, how can you trust the VA? Every facet of everything in the world, the fundamental purpose of the VA is an amazing thing. It's there to take care of us. There are people in all walks of life, in all businesses, and all things, that there's good apples and bad apples. And, you know, one thing I've really learned is self-care.
That's it.
I see the caseloads that, through my internship in a clinical setting for my degree, I see what caseloads look like for doctors, for social workers, for all of these people. if you're burned out, right? If you're burned out, how are you going to give good care? How are you going to remember all these things? So it's a whole thing. It's not just, hey,
well, it's not
the VA is terrible.
malicious. It's
Right.
not malicious. It's not intentional.
Right.
It's like doctors have been trained now to prescribe X for Y, and not like, oh, we need to look at you holistically and figure out what the hell is wrong with you.
And we want to work with the VA. We want, as a veteran service organization, I want to work with the VA. At the end of the day, it's suicide prevention. It's keeping veterans alive. It's giving veterans other options.
Do a good job.
So that's what we want.
It's just the drugs. The drugs,
right?
Just people need them, right? But like, at what dosage is the right one to keep you?
It scares me because I feel lucky. I really feel lucky on the fact that I was only on 2 medications, because in this clinical role, I'm in an environment where we're dealing with primarily veterans that come through the program. I see, and I know other vets that are on, 5, 10, 15 medications. And I think,
do you even need all that?
Right.
It's a cocktail, right? So like how do you get them off of that?
All of this ended up leading to going to this camp over the next 18 months, kind of seeing, like, I'm always really fascinated with how businesses work and how things work and what I would do to make it different or make it better. So I kind of took this model of what Semper Fi Fund was offering, and I said, why aren't we offering mental health resources? You've got this group of people together, and the camps are great for what they do. And I've learned, that's their mission is recovery. Their mission is not the mental health. So I thought to myself, golf is my passion. I love golf. I've been playing it my whole life. I know the game. What if I took just the model of the golf camp, made Next18, which is a mental health nonprofit. We bring in vets and first responders, and we give them the golf lessons. We give them 18 holes of golf every day. The same model, but we're also going to incorporate mental health. Every day of the camp, we're giving 2 to 4 hours of mental health training. And these modules are on resilience, moral injury, PTSD, symptom management, yoga, meditation, mindfulness, breath work, all of these different resources, so that when the participants come to the camp, each day we kind of build them up with more and more resources. A lot of them fit in with the game of golf. Breath work, you incorporate that in with a pre-shot routine, right? You do the same thing over and over. And if you've ever had a lesson with a pro, they always kind of stress get that breath going, get the 2 or 3 breaths that you need while you're figuring out your shot and what you're going to do. And then you step up to the ball, you take that next breath to get ready for the shot, and then you take your swing. This is all teaching. There's so many other life lessons that can be applied to the game just in the pre-shot routine and just in the game alone, that golf seems like a really, really great avenue to get it. So we get the participants in, hey, we're going to play golf. Everything's provided free of charge to you, but we're also going to give you some resources so that when you leave here, you're better equipped to tackle a lot of the roadblocks that veterans and first responders deal with.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine the PTSD. For those, I couldn't imagine. Like first responders too. Like it's people think, oh, it's all BS. No, it's for reals. Like
here's the thing, though. Since I started this internship with my degree about 9 months ago, the word that I learned that I didn't know existed, and maybe you've never heard of, moral injury. Are you familiar with that?
No.
So, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to give the best understanding of what it is at the present moment of my education. Moral injury is, let's say you grow up, and this can affect anyone, not just vets or first responders or anyone. Let's say you grow up in an environment, right? You're taught that being good to people, killing people is a sin, right? Or killing people is wrong, or doing the wrong thing. You're taught all of these things as a child and through early adolescence and into an adulthood. Something happens in life. So a prime example, you're on a deployment, and in combat, civilian casualties happen. It's a byproduct of war. This civilian gets killed. From that killing, it elicits something in you. Maybe you did it. Maybe you inadvertently shot someone because the fog of war, right? All of a sudden your values, right? This whole I know it's wrong to kill someone, especially someone who's innocent. And I did that. And no ramifications come from that, right? You're in war. You feel terrible about it. Your whole perspective, you're carrying this guilt. Yeah, there's PTSD involved in that. But the way you view the world, this lens has been completely changed. And that's kind of what moral injury is. And moral injury can happen to anyone. The thing is, PTSD is the mental illness that has gained more notoriety over the last decade. It's gotten the funding. It's in the DSM as a mental disorder. It's when we're in the military and they give us a disability rating, almost every single one of us that has been in combat gets diagnosed with. But there's differentiations between the two, like with the symptoms. So when you're told you have this one thing, it can be really invalidating because it's like, well, I have some of the side effects or the symptoms of that, but I don't have these other things.
It's like a very big catch-all, right?
Yeah. So moral injury is getting a lot of attention now. Like one of the veteran providers that I'm working with, she's a Marine, and she's actually writing her dissertation on moral injury in police officers. Both fields, right? Imagine if you're a firefighter or an EMT. Like, I deployed and I went to a country for 9 months and I came back and I don't have to go to Afghanistan ever again. Like, I am physically removed from that place and all of the stressors. Yeah, there's still mental and emotional stuff, but physically I'll probably never be there again. Now imagine if you're an EMT worker and you work in Milwaukee and you've been on the job for 5 years. You have to drive by these same places every day. Feelings of hopelessness, helplessness. You continually go on to locations and you're picking up bodies and putting them in the back of the ambulance. And maybe you saw a kid get run over by a drunk driver, and you see that location every day for years because that's on your patrol. It changes you, and being able to get the resources, first of all, being able to even understand what this thing is, tying it back to the traumas that you're dealing with and the symptoms, that is something that we've been really focused on, is allowing our participants, we educate them, hey, this is what this thing is. You may be feeling it as this, or this. And then it's really interesting too, from the
you connect. Like you connect.
Yeah.
They're like,
all of a sudden you're
you
like,
understand.
Oh,
like,
well,
you know, they understand. They know you understand what they're going through, and then they start putting the pieces together. Like,
yeah.
oh.
And a lot of the education that I've gotten too, and this isn't a catch-all, but a lot of the things that veterans or that the military members and first responders experience is when you're a child, programming. You learn things from your parents at a very young age. Between like 0 and 8, we learn, I think, like 75% of the programming that's going to take us into our adult life. A lot of us go to the military. A lot of us are fixers. We're selfless service. It's just something that's been ingrained in us as children. And we go to the military kind of as maybe an escape, or, you know, for whatever reason you join the military. And you're kind of, maybe you're looking for these things, right? And then an incident happens, right? Like, let's say you didn't have a father and you go to the military for a father figure or like leadership, and your leaders do something heinous, right? Like maybe they cover something up or any number of things. And that morally, like, that exacerbates stuff from childhood. Being able to kind of, the more I'm learning about it and the more we're learning as an organization and just connecting the dots with the providers in the community that I've been working with, giving these resources to the vets and the first responders so that they're able to start understanding. Because at the end of the day, the traumas that we have from the past, it's a part of us, but it's not who we are. It doesn't define us.
Yeah.
But getting someone to understand that, right, by giving them all of these resources. Hey, we're going to have some talks about some stuff that's really uncomfortable. But day one of the camp, we went over some breathing exercises to kind of help keep you rational instead of getting emotional, and being able to stay in the present so that we can address the past traumas, so that we can accept what happened and try to move forward. So it's been a lot. It's been a really big learning experience over the last 12 months, both personally and professionally, and how to incorporate that into Next18. Because at the end of the day, we're a mental health nonprofit. We use the game of golf as our modality for getting people involved. So it's twofold, right? It's mental health and it's golf.
do you feel that like had you not gone through what you went through post service, like you would not be doing this at all?
I
right?
wouldn't be on this path.
You'd be running your company.
Yep.
Right? You'd be numb, and you would just run your company and made money and live the American dream, blah blah blah. But then like not dealt with the past and not deal with the reliance on the prescriptions that they were providing you. Not saying they were like addictive or like, oh yeah, but it's more like what it does to your essentially.
Well, they were 100%. They were.
Oh, really?
Because
my
understanding,
it's not chosen though. It's not like, oh, I need my
right.
whatever. It's like you just take it every day because it's part of your routine because that's what you've been done.
That's what I was told. And as a once
maybe
soldier,
not the Ambien though, because some people get addicted to Ambien.
I think what happens when a lot of us are put on medications, not just vets and first responders, but in general. Yeah, if you're put on a medication and a medication has let's say you're supposed to use it for 90 days, right? That's the recommended from the FDA or from the whoever made the pharmaceuticals. You typically don't see your doctor every 90 days. So if you go back into your doctor 6 months
later for a checkup,
right, your body is already technically addicted to the chemical, and you're probably experiencing symptoms of withdrawal because your body has adapted to the amount that's in your body, and now it's saying, "Oh, I need more." So your symptoms start coming back.
It takes forever.
Yeah. But if you go into a provider, and unfortunately, sometimes you go into providers, and the way that the healthcare system is set up, it's let's get the people in, get them in so we can bill and we can move forward and as many patients as possible because the healthcare is inundated with patients now. It's, oh, you're still having symptoms? Okay, hey, let's just up your dose. That should help. Okay, cool. I'll see you in another 6 months.
And it's just, or we'll give you a second one that tends to do well with that drug. That happened to me too. And I was like 4 months into, I was like, this thing doesn't even work. And it makes me sicker. When
in reality, there's so many proven holistic approaches to coping with a lot of the things that we deal with in life. But unfortunately, we've all been conditioned. Just take a pill and everything will be okay. When in reality, maybe learning how to do like yoga or meditation to be in the present.
So how long were you on that before they were like, oh, just do it for 2 weeks. Take it off for 2 weeks. Because that's what they always say. 2 weeks will get out of your system. Whatever.
I think it was definitely over 3.5 years.
Yeah. Dude, they don't have to.
And that's not,
I yelled at my doctor because what happened with me was his PA was like, oh, just take 2 weeks. You can get off of it. And like, that was the weaning. It was like, oh, we'll go to 10 and then we'll go to 5 and whatever. It was a 2 week period. So I did exactly what they said. And then everything was fine. And then like next week after that, my body was jacked. Like,
yeah,
I remember just being like so nauseous. Like I never threw up. I would just be so nauseous for like hours. And I was like, what is happening? And I knew it was the drugs, but then you're like, I'm not going, like, you don't want to go back to it because it's not like, will you just get back on, the symptoms will go away. And I'm like, well, what is that going to do? That means I'm addicted to it? No thanks. But I remember yelling at my doctor and saying like, dude, you need to train your people, bro. Because like, I was on a drug for 10 years, 2 weeks. Come on. Like, and I knew nothing about drugs. I did nothing. I was trying to figure out what was going on. And everything on the internet was saying like, this is, if the longer you're on something, the longer the period has to be, and it has to be really slow. So are you on anything then right now or no?
No.
See? And how do you feel? I mean, you got to deal with your shit, but I mean, how do you feel?
I have to deal with my shit, and there's still trauma, in my past, but I've learned through my education, through the clinical internship that I'm in, through other modalities of processing, right? Yeah. Like, how to move forward without using medications. And a lot of that is through holistic approaches. And that can be any number of different things, right? I think the hardest thing for me post whatever happened is accepting that, first of all, I have to share the story. It's hard to talk about it, but I need to use what little platform I have right now to let other veterans hear it, first of all, and hope that this gets out and someone else hears it in a position where they can actually do something about it. Like I told you earlier, I didn't talk to the VA for 2 years, but about 6 months ago, I finally got over my feelings of angst and made an appointment with my mental health provider at the VA, who is very well regarded in Milwaukee. I walked in after not seeing this man for 2.5 years, and immediately I had the feelings of like, I felt it in my chest. I was angry, and he had no clue what had happened. The first things out of his mouth was, "Hey, how's your wife doing?" Awesome. So I was able to get through the uncomfortableness, the anxiety, the emotional wall, and explain to him what had happened. And I said, I didn't want to come here and ever talk to you, but I had to get past some things in my life and accept, right? Like this is where I am. This is what happened. I think he really took it to heart, and he wrote me an email afterwards, and he said, "You've really changed my perspective on empathy and how I prescribe, and I need to be more aware of what I do, because this could have went X different ways, right?" And think Seriously. Of if this happened to me, what other veterans did this happen to, right? I can't be the
other side.
One,
yeah,
right?
Where they get off their stuff because they're like, "What's wrong with me?" And then and bad happens.
Our suicide rates are through the roof, both in the veteran community and the first responder community. So if at the very least, me telling him and engaging him and getting through my uncomfortable feelings changed his way of doing what he did, and he also shared that, right, disseminated with the rest of his providers, maybe somehow I saved another vet that doesn't have the willpower to speak up or just doesn't know what to say. So that had to happen.
There's a reason. There's always a reason why things happen the way they do.
And carrying that through the nonprofit, right? Like I'm very close to a lot of the vets and first responders because all of the commonalities of the things that they're dealing with, I just went through. So it's an emotional roller coaster for these camps. We've had 2 now. We did 2 one in September and October of last year, kind of like proof of concept. Hey, this is what we're doing. I fully funded everything with a couple of donations from some local nonprofits in the area and some private donors. But we proved it's a thing. And unanimously, the 21 participants that came, they don't stop talking about it. They're still using the exercise we gave them now 4 or 5 months later. A couple of them are on the advisory committee. Milwaukee Fire Department really got involved early on with their chief, Chief Lipsky. I couldn't be more thankful for him helping. The thing is, if we're going to be able to give our services to like the police, the sheriffs, EMTs in the areas, you need an organization. You need someone like Chief Lipsky who understands that there are mental health issues and we need to address them, especially after everything that first responders have been dealing with COVID. Everybody's burned out. We're seeing stuff in the news.
Like reports, super burned out.
Yeah. And first responders are showing at least 1 or 2 symptoms of PTSD. They're living what veterans have lived for decades, right? And we've been saying we need more help in the mental health space, but it's always been so stigmatized. It's just this thing that people don't want to talk about. And even when you see like Simone Biles and all of these other athletes that are finally speaking up about it, it's still kind of so stigmatized.
It's because
no one really wants
because people think it's a weakness. Like, oh, you're not. I mean, the person who's having the issues is like, I don't want to share that. That's weak. I'm going to show weakness, right? And it's like, That's not weakness. That's a strength because you recognized it. Like, you figured it out. You know what's going on.
Here's a good one for you. Imagine being a Green Beret, this badass guy, right? You're this macho alpha male. You are the tip of the spear in the military. You go on 4, 5, 6, 7 deployments over 5 years. It's all kinetic, right? So every time you're deploying, you're in combat, you're killing people, you're seeing teammates get killed. You're just living this life. And every day you're back in your unit and you're being told like, you are it. You are like the most badass person in the world. You can do anything. There's no object or barrier that you can't take down. And you are the alpha male. Well, no human can tackle everything that life throws at them. And all of a sudden you start feeling differently you can't speak up. You can't say anything, especially when we're in these positions like a police officer. If you start saying to your leadership that you're having mental health issues or you're not feeling right, they're probably, and I don't know this, but I would imagine there's a chance to like lose your job, or, you know, maybe you get pulled off the streets and you put on a desk position because suicide and the risk and what that would do to the department.
Liability and all the other,
Instead of, hey, okay, what do we need to do to help you and make sure that you're okay and give you resources? We need to get past the stigma of, if you're speaking up because you have feelings and emotions, that you're somehow like damaged. So that's what we're trying to do in our own little section of the world right now. And hopefully,
so why did you choose golf? I mean, because you knew how to play golf, you enjoyed it, or you realized through your own experience that summer or that time when that this is helping you in a way that you never thought it would help you?
I think there's a lot to be said for recreational therapy. That's part of what I'm working on with Next18 with my master's in social work. I saw the benefit from the camps that I went to, right? When you're outdoors and you're around 12 fellow veterans and you've all been in combat, it's easier to talk about the stuff, right? We as vets and first responders have a very dark sense of humor because the things that we've seen and things that we've engaged in, we just have sick jokes. And when you're in an environment where you're at a camp and someone kind of makes a joke and people around you actually get it, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm finally around people that understand me. And it snowballs into, hey, I finally feel comfortable about opening up about maybe this. We had a participant, he's also an assistant pro at one of the private country clubs here. He came to our camp and he gave the lessons for the 3 days of this camp. I did not know at the time when he came that he was a Marine and that he had gone through the PGA Hope program. After teaching this class, he came up to me and first of all, he donated all of the funds that he made that year. When you're in the PGA Hope program, I guess the teaching, they paid him like a couple $100s for his time. He donated that all to the nonprofit. And he said, you know, this is the first time in 10 years that I've been out of the military where even though I was instructing, I felt like one of the guys and I felt the camaraderie again. So he's involved now. He's on the advisory committee. Seeing that and like reading that email from him was like, okay, we have something here. Let's keep going with it. It's recreational therapy. And what I want to do with my degree is when I'm not running the camps, which, right now we've got like 4 scheduled this coming year, 1 each month, because there's a lot of downtime that I need to retool and just self-care for myself after a camp. But I want to do recreational therapy, one-on-one counseling, where I take a veteran in Milwaukee and we do like 6 sessions over the summer and we just go play 9 holes of golf and we just talk. Hopefully through Next18 or my degree down the road, there's an ability for me to do this free of charge, right? So the vet doesn't have to pay for the golf, whether that's figuring out insurance and getting a credential that way, or some private course or some local course says, hey, we really like what you're doing. We want to be a part of it. We're going to give you, 15 rounds of golf over the course of the summer on like off peak hours, like a Tuesday at 10 a.m. for 9 holes. So that we can just talk, because while I understand,
talk to nobody, right? I mean,
right.
That's the
I understand the benefit of psychologists. I literally work under 2 veteran psychologists right now. It has its place, but there are some people that inherently just, they don't like the sterile one-on-one environment. They don't like sitting in a chair across from someone, or right now, Zoom. Zoom is really impersonal. It's really hard to connect with, like I'm talking to you. How much more awesome would this be if we're sitting next to each other and we can like feel the energy?
They're going to golf court and we're like hanging out.
Right.
And like being
so imagine going out for 2 hours and we just play 9 holes and we talk, and it doesn't have to be clinical. It doesn't have to be this sterile, hey, I'm going to go through all the things that I've learned to kind of educate you. let's just talk. And through the talking over the course of 6 sessions over the summer, we kind of figure out, hey, where do we need to help you? And through that, I give the resources. I don't tell you how to do it. I say, hey, here's the resources. They've worked. I've used them. There's research behind them. If you want to use them, use them. But I'm here to help you.
Yeah,
So,
because you're also not like, you're not coming from a position of authority, or you're not like, I'm a doctor, here, take this. You're more like, dude, I went through this. Like,
there is
this is
model.
what worked for me. There's a lot of BS out there, but this is what worked for me. And like, you can do what you want with it.
There's this model that I just learned about. I think it's called the parent, adult, child model. And it's like this bracket, right? Like parent, adult, child. And it's how we interact. And if parents interact with children, it's always from this, like, you need to do this. And if it's adult to adult, it's more like what we're doing. We're just talking. Yeah, I want to be more of adult to adult instead of provider to child, right? Or even provider to adult, because it's still, hey, you need to do this. I know there's benefits to that, right? These are psychologists, social workers. This whole field is there for a reason. I just want to kind of, how I watch the recreational therapy with Semper Fi, I want to watch how it's done and alter it a little bit. So when you did
the Semper Fi, it like really put a light bulb went off in your head. You're like, holy crap.
I think Semper Fi knows my stance with them. I'm pretty sure they kept me alive post getting out of the military. They purchased a service dog for me and put her through all of her training when I first got out. That dog is a lifesaver. I can't say enough good things. And I know it's funny because they're a nonprofit and I'm a nonprofit, but I think nonprofits should work together at the end of the day because we're both trying to take care of veterans.
Same job. It's all the
same.
I mean,
so I would literally be the poster child for how amazing they have been. And they know. I convey that to them literally every time I go to an event with them. So
was that event in Wisconsin, or was that event?
No, that was in Denver at Inverness. Yeah. But I actually went to one last year. So they shut down with COVID. They were doing a lot of virtual stuff, but they had to shut down the camps in like 2020 and early 2021.
Yeah.
Their first camp back across all different modalities, right? So sailing and all these different things that they did was a golf camp at Kohler last year in, I think, August. And because they weren't flying everyone in yet, they only opened it to people in the region, and you had to drive there. And luckily Kohler, right, one of the best courses in the country, is like 45 minutes away from me. So I was like, yep, I'll go. That was 4 months before my first camp. Going to Kohler and seeing all the veterans and seeing the people that ran that camp that I had met 2 years ago was just like, it was like someone put defib pads to me. And I was like, all right, I know why I'm doing this. I see how happy I am being at this camp. I see the camaraderie here, right? Like I knew I was going to set this thing up, but then I went back to a camp and it just was like, yep, you have clearly found your purpose in life and this is what you need to be doing. And thank you to this organization for kind of like showing me the light.
It's crazy how things like that happen in life, right? Because you would never thought that was your path. You probably thought a completely different path. And then things happen for a reason, which, it's hell. But then it changes your whole trajectory in life that you never would imagine a million years would have ever happened.
Right.
But then you go to that event and it, like you said, it adds fuel to your fire. It's one thing about talking about doing something. It's another thing about actually doing something, right? That's the other thing too. Because a lot of people say, oh, I want to do this, but they never do it. And it's like, you made the leap because of what you've been through and you saw how it works to help other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So now
how long has Next18 been around then? Like a year?
10 months. Yeah. I started in like June of last year. We did the filing, we did everything the right way to become a 501c3. The 2 camps that I ran, luckily that course that I went to work at after I sold my business, I developed a really good relationship with them, Fire Ridge in Grafton. It's a pretty nice track, about like 20 minutes north of here. And their owners kind of, I started explaining them, hey, this is what I want to do, but I can't fund like going to Kohler and paying $15,000 or $20,000 to run a camp and bring 10 people in and lodge them and feed them. So they were so unbelievably gracious. They literally donated everything minus like the cost for them to feed us. So, I paid food costs. A couple of organizations in the area in Milwaukee, Mel's Charity, LaShawn with 2 guys with balls. A couple of these organizations kind of like got me started with just a couple of polos like this one. We got them embroidered with a local business. Michelle, she helped with that. Bootstrapped, man. I took what I learned from owning a small business right on the for-profit side, and that to me, right, that was a learning experience. I tapped into some stuff I learned getting my post-grad in business, and I learned all of these things to kind of tie into now from experience into the nonprofit. And we were able to run these 2 camps. We brought in outside providers to do the mental health training. We gave them yoga, yoga nidra, mindfulness exercises, moral injury, PTSD, all these different modules. We were working with the Milwaukee Fire Department. So I brought this, and it's funny because you asked that question of, would you have ever seen yourself doing this? I didn't know what social work was, right? I always just assumed it was this thing, right? That people just did. Social work is connecting the dots on the ground level. And there's various levels, micro and macro, right? But at its core, social work is a good social worker is someone who knows the resources in the community and is able to connect their person with those resources to empower the individual and the community. So in a way, it's like, I think I've been a social worker my whole life. I just didn't know it, because now it's like connecting all the dots. It's bringing all the resources together, and it's giving the vets and the first responders at the camp these resources. So it's crazy, but it's also really cool to see it all unfolding. And
so, like, where do you want to take Next 18? Do you want national, right? Like, that's your goal.
Yeah, because we initially started this conversation with the weather. It's kind of hard to run golf camps in Wisconsin year round, unfortunately. So
I mean, you guys could do all kinds of cool stuff, right? Like events, or you could, it could just,
Yeah. So we have an outing scheduled this June with a local course, and then we're tentatively scheduled for 4 golf camps, and we're looking at working with Erin Hills, Sand Valley. These are like top 20 courses in the country. So they're really buying into what we're doing, and they're really facilitating it. The thing is, we're at like that growth phase, right? Like the funding phase. This is just like a for-profit. The only way we can keep doing this is with funding. So I've spent the last 4 months getting the message out, doing podcasts, meeting with locals in the community, and tapping into my boards to connect the dots of the only way that Next 18 is going to get national is if I trust the people around me and start doing something that I never did in the past, which was, asking for help. So LaShawn connecting us, right? Like this is what it's about. This is getting the message out so that people can hear it and trying to grow this thing. We want to have 25, 30 camps a year across the country.
Nationwide.
Yeah. One of the other things we're putting together is we want to do like a virtual check-in. We want Next 18's camp to be the start. I don't want you to come to a camp and then we never hear from you again. We want to develop a community, a network, and maybe each month we're going to do this module where for 1 hour a month, same day every month, we're going to have you able to come back to the trough. And this month we might do an hour on resilience. Next month, we're going to focus on PTSD. The week after that, or the month after that, these modules, right? So 15 minutes checking in at the beginning, 30 minutes of education, and then 15 minutes on the back end for questions. But we want our participants we want our alumni to feel like they now have resources and this community that they can go back to. We started an indoor golf league this year to keep them engaged. We had a couple sign up. So We've got like 12 or 15 teams. We're going to grow that next year with X Golf and a couple of the locations in Milwaukee. The outings, right? We might charge you, $100 to come to the outing. Our alumni will always get a cheaper price. It's grassroots, growing a network, right? It's social work, growing, empowering our community so that they don't feel alone anymore, and they feel comfortable talking, and they feel comfortable asking for help. And then they go back to their families, their friends, their force if they're still working, and they share, right? In the military, we call it force multiplying. Teach one so that one can teach three, and it just keeps going.
Well, I think it's really cool what you're doing, and I appreciate you like actually sharing your story, because then people can see that like there's a purpose behind it, not just, oh, we're doing this thing,
Yeah.
And if it wasn't through what you sacrificed for your country and the other veterans, there wouldn't be a need for this. And I think it's really cool what you're doing. I think it's very smart, especially with sharing the game of golf with anybody, really, to just kind of be around a community of people that are similar, but then also just getting away from life. I always kind of explain my wife about that. I'm like, you can't explain golf. Golf is, when you're out in the middle of nowhere hitting a ball with four people you really don't really know that well, like it's kind of fun. It's like an adventure, right? And you kind of do get to escape for those 4 or 5 hours, whatever it is. And I think like it's almost like you're doing the therapy through that connection of, how many times we go play golf, you maybe go with one other person, and then you always end up with 2 other people you don't know. But by the end of that round, you're all friends. Like it happens every single time you play. Like without fault. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad. It's always like you connect on a different level, and it's kind of cool. Like you're just bringing that therapy to veterans, essentially, where there's no judgment. There's no, it's safe, right? Safe environment away from the clinical side of, the stigma of you're broken, right? Sorry, you're broken. Take these pills. Like that.
Yeah. I'm confident that golf in 2020 and early 2021 is like what kept me alive. Every morning I would get up and either go to work at the course, right? Or
you enjoyed
play golf. Yeah. Because
you were excited.
Well, first of all, I wasn't running something for a while. So it was nice to kind of like just go in and punch in and do my job and leave. And I enjoyed it. I did financially with like selling my business.
It sucks financially, but I mean,
no, I was fine. I literally, I walked into that course and I said, I will literally clean carts 2 days a week. I just want free golf. I just want to be able to play this game. And they said, cool. 2 days later, they moved me into the pro shop. But like, what I didn't know when I started playing there is that a bunch of the members that were there were veterans as well.
Of course they all are. Everyone's a veteran.
I didn't know.
We never realized it. Like that's.
And little by little, I started playing golf with them. Hey, do you want to come out and play golf? Cool. And before I knew it, I was playing like Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, all summer, all fall. And it was that thing where I just needed to be outside. I needed to be away from crazy. A lot of times I would leave my phone in the car, and I just it's in nature. Yeah. And the cool thing for me, like Next18, one of our mottos is kind of where I came up with the name was like the next hurdle, the next challenge, the next mission, the next 18, right? The next 18 holes. Every challenge, every mission, kind of like in the military, it's all different. Golf is literally the same thing. You are never going to play the same round of golf. Even if I played the same course 120 times last year, the pin placements were always different. The tee blocks were always different, right? The weather, the people I played with, how I felt. Like you will never play the same round of golf. And I think that's something that people who play golf love, because there's that uncertainty of golf being such a cruel but beautiful game. And all it takes is like one good shot, right? And it's, I'll be back tomorrow, even though I just shot 120, which I don't know what that feels like, but,
we'll lie.
You
shoot the 120s.
Maybe. We'll have to play.
You probably got really good. I bet you got really good, too, when you're playing that much. Like, you just kind of like get in that routine and like.
The game came back pretty quickly.
Yeah, fast. It's like you won't realize how fast it's still in there. When you play once a month, you're not going to get it. But. Well, I'm excited for you guys. I'm glad I got to meet you. It's cool that what you're doing, and I appreciate you like sharing your story with everybody. And, you know, if you guys out there need to check out Next18, where can they find, what's your website address?
Next18.org. So next18.org. And we are on Facebook, Instagram. We typically post a lot of mental health resources and golf tips and advice. So we try to keep it consistent with that. We are on most of the social media platforms. So
Well, that's cool. Well, thank you for being on the show today. And you guys need to check this out. It's really cool. So I'll see you guys in the next episode.
thanks, Paul.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Behind the Golf Brand Podcast.
You're gonna beat me at golf?
Stay connected on and off the show by visiting golfersauthority.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.
Golf is always more fun when you win.
Stay out of the beach and see you on the green.